So most guys still think building a real emotional connection with a woman takes weeks of texting, 3 or 4 dates, some slow burn where she finally opens up. But put 2 strangers on a long flight, let them talk for 5 hours straight, and they land at baggage claim like old friends. That breaks the whole theory, because a deep emotional connection with a woman, the kind that actually creates real attraction and makes her feel something for you fast, follows a specific pattern that has nothing to do with time. Once you see the pattern, you'll notice you've been skipping it on almost every date you've had this year. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to build a deep emotional connection with any woman so fast, using just 3 moves pulled straight from real relationship psychology, the same moves research therapists and psychologists use to explain what actually makes 2 people feel emotionally close and what quietly pushes them apart. Which is why I went deep into research from people who've spent entire careers studying how emotional intimacy forms between 2 people, so you don't have to. And I'm about to walk you through it using a date I almost wrecked in the first 10 minutes. Stick around for that, because once you hear the mistake I made, you're going to recognize it happening in your own conversations. And if that's useful to you, subscribe now. But here's where the problem begins for most guys. You think connection means being interesting, good stories, quick jokes, just enough charm, and she'll feel something. So you go on the date and you perform. You tell the story about the trip, land the joke, keep the energy high. And for a while, it works. She's laughing, the conversation is moving. Then somewhere around the second course, her eyes drift to her phone for just half a second. Then her answers get shorter. She says, "That's so cool," but in the flat tone people use once they've checked out. And you're sitting there thinking, I did everything right, so why is this dying again? Well, let's break it down. A psychologist named John Gottman, you should know him by now if you follow the channel. He spent decades at the University of Washington recording real couples talking, down to the smallest, most boring exchanges, and he found the relationships that lasted weren't full of impressive stories at all, but something he called bids, tiny moments where one person reaches out, a comment, a sigh, and oh man, look at that moment, leaving the other person to either turn toward it or let it die. But the couples who kept turning toward each other's bids stayed close for years, while couples who missed them, even politely, drifted apart no matter how charming either one was on paper. So rewind that dinner. While you were performing your best material, she probably dropped 2 or 3 tiny bids and you never clocked them. Maybe she mentioned being exhausted from work and you said, "That sucks," and went straight back to your own story. Small detail, not rude, but it was a door cracked open for half a second and you walked past it, chasing your next line. I once had a similar experience and the date almost died before it started actually. But looking back, the damage got done before I even left my apartment. I remember staring at the bathroom mirror 20 minutes before I had to leave, with half my brain running through what I'd say and the other half stuck on a breakout along my jaw. Imagine tilting my head under the light trying to figure out if it was as obvious as it felt. But that's a distracted performance before the date has even begun, because you can't fully focus on someone else's bids when part of you is still managing your own face in your head. That's actually why my routine changed a few months back. I started using Tej Hanley's acne system, the same wash and serum I use before every date now, not just for special occasions. It's built specifically for men's skin, which is thicker and oilier and takes a real beating from shaving almost every day, something most generic skincare just aren't made to handle. The system starts with a salicylic acid wash, which cleans deep without leaving your skin dried out and tight. Then there are the glycolic pads, which smooth out texture and fade old marks over time, the kind of thing you don't notice happening until someone tells you your skin looks better. Finally, the acne serum, which calms redness and actually targets the breakouts instead of just covering them up. Everything's fragrance-free, paraben-free, and made to repair your skin instead of stripping it raw, which is the difference between skincare that works with you and skincare that just dries you out and calls it clean. I finish with the AM moisturizer in the morning or the PM moisturizer at night to keep my skin hydrated and complete the routine. But don't take my word for it. Tej Hanley has more than 25,000 5-star reviews from all kinds of men, from athletes and creators to working professionals and everyday guys who want an uncomplicated routine that works. And for me, as someone who spends a lot of time creating content, having a routine I can trust makes a real difference. And full transparency, Tej Hanley is sponsoring this video, which is the only reason I can tell you they're giving you up to 40% off your first box, plus an awesome free gift worth over $20. And if you decide to stick with it, members get 20% off for life after that, but you only get any of that through the first link in the description below. So if your pre-date routine could use the same fix mine did, that's where to go. because once I had a routine I trusted, I stopped spending those 20 minutes before a date inspecting every breakout and worrying about how my skin looked. I could get ready, do my quick 3-minute skincare routine, leave the mirror behind, and focus on the person in front of me. And on that date, that was exactly what I failed to do. I was so focused on performing that I missed the moments when she was actually trying to connect with me. Because 5 minutes in, sitting across from her, I caught myself doing the exact same thing I want to show you right now. The same mistake that's probably costing you every bid she's already dropped tonight without you noticing. She was talking about her sister's wedding, some story about a bridesmaid dress that didn't fit right, and I caught myself nodding along while my brain was already loading up a story about my own cousin's wedding, waiting for my turn to jump in. And I actually opened my mouth to say it, but something made me stop. So instead of launching into my story, I just asked her what she wore instead. One question, that's it. Her whole face changed. She leaned forward a little, started laughing about the backup dress she'd found in a thrift store an hour before the ceremony, and for the next 4 minutes she was fully there, not performing, not checking her phone, just talking. But I hadn't said anything clever. I hadn't told a single story of my own. I just turned toward the bid instead of walking past it chasing mine. Now that's the part that trips guys up the most, because turning toward a bid isn't about having a smart response ready. It's just noticing the door cracked open and stepping through it instead of talking over it with your own material. Therapists who study this call it responsiveness, and the research backs it up hard. Couples and even new acquaintances who feel truly listened to in small moments report far higher closeness than pairs who traded impressive stories back and forth all night. So being interesting gets you attention for a few minutes, but being responsive is what actually builds the feeling of closeness that makes someone want to keep talking to you. So that's move 1, catching the bid and turning toward it instead of walking past it. But noticing her bids is only half the equation, and if you stop there, you'll build a connection that's a little lopsided, where she's opening up and you're just absorbing it like a sponge. That's not closeness either. That's an interview, and I learned that the hard way about a month after the wedding dress date with a completely different woman in a conversation that started great and then went nowhere for a reason I couldn't understand until much later. We were an hour into a coffee date and I was doing everything right on paper, turning toward her bids, asking follow-up questions, actually listening. She told me about a rough patch with her mom, some real vulnerable stuff, and I nodded. I validated her. I asked a good question, but when I looked back at that conversation afterward, I realized I never once gave her anything back. She'd opened a door and shared something real, and I just stood in the doorway asking more questions instead of stepping through it myself. There's a well-known study from psychologists Arthur Aaron and Elaine Aaron run through Stony Brook University, where they had pairs of strangers ask each other a specific set of increasingly personal questions, the kind that push both people to reveal something real about themselves, not just one person. The pairs who did this reported feeling significantly closer afterward than pairs who just made small talk. And the key detail almost everyone leaves out when they talk about that study is that the closeness only worked because both people were sharing. One person opening up while the other just listens and probes doesn't build intimacy, it builds a therapy session. Vulnerability has to go both directions or it stalls out completely, no matter how good your questions are. So on that coffee date, I was collecting her vulnerability without ever handing any of my own back, and she noticed it too, even if she couldn't name it, because by the end, she'd gone quiet, polite, a little guarded, the same way you'd get if a stranger kept asking you personal questions without ever telling you anything about themselves. Which brings up the real question, the one that decides whether a conversation turns into actual closeness or just stays a well-run interview. What exactly are you supposed to share, and how much, before it starts sounding like you're dumping your problems on a first date instead of connecting? This is honestly the question I get asked the most, and it's a big part of why I wrote The Truth Detector in the first place, because knowing how much a woman actually wants from you versus how much she's just testing the waters is most of the battle. But here's the short version for right now. The honest answer is you match her, not exceed her, not undershoot her either. If she just told you something moderately personal, like feeling anxious about her job, you don't respond with your deepest childhood wound. That's not connection, that's you overwhelming her, and it makes people pull back fast because now they feel responsible for a conversation that got heavier than they signed up for. But if you respond to something real with a generic, yeah, I get that, work stress is rough, you've just closed the door she opened. The move is matching her depth almost exactly, then handing something back that's roughly the same size. So on that coffee date, when she told me about the rough patch with her mom, the right move wasn't more questions. It was something like actually admitting my own relationship relationship with my dad went through a stretch where we barely talked for almost a year, and how weird it felt when we finally did. That's not a bigger story, not a smaller one either, just roughly the same weight as what she gave me. That's the exchange that makes two people feel like they're actually building something together instead of one person interviewing the other. I didn't do that in the moment, by the way. I figured this out afterward, replaying the date in my head, wondering why it had gone flat, which is honestly how most guys learn this, after the fact, when it's too late to fix that specific conversation. So that's move 2, matching vulnerability instead of just collecting it. But even once you're turning toward her bids and trading vulnerability at the right weight, there's still a way to blow the whole thing in about 4 seconds flat, and it's something almost nobody talks about because it doesn't look like a mistake. It looks like being a good listener. Here's what I mean. A few weeks after the coffee date, I was talking to a woman about a trip she took that went sideways. Flights cancelled, lost luggage, the whole thing was messed up. And when she got to the part about finally getting to her hotel at 3 in the morning, I said something like, "Oh man, that sounds stressful." True, sympathetic, but it landed completely flat because stressful could describe literally anything from a delayed flight to losing a job. It's a word with no picture attached to it. There's research out of Northeastern University from a psychologist named Lisa Feldman Barrett on something called emotional granularity. Basically, how specific your emotional language is when you talk about what you felt. People who use precise, specific emotional words instead of broad ones like stressed or bad or fine don't just understand themselves better, they connect with other people better too, because specific language gives the listener an actual scene to picture instead of a vague label to nod at. When you say stressful, someone's brain has nothing to grab onto. When you say something closer to what actually happened, standing in an airport at midnight watching the departures board flip your flight to cancelled while your phone died, suddenly there's an image and the other person can feel it with you instead of just acknowledging it. So when I caught myself saying, "That sounds stressful," that night, I stopped and I asked her what she actually felt standing in that airport at midnight. Not what happened next, what she felt right then. And her answer wasn't vague anymore either. She told me about the specific moment her phone died and she just stood there laughing because there was nothing left to do but laugh. That's a real memory now. That's not a data point in a conversation. That's a scene two people shared, and scenes are what people remember when they think about why they feel close to someone. That's move 3, trading vague labels for actual specific detail, both in what she says and what you say back. Stack all 3 of these together, catching her bids instead of talking past them, matching her vulnerability instead of just collecting it, and trading specific detail instead of vague labels, and you're not performing a date anymore. You're building the exact thing that makes someone remember you the next morning instead of forgetting the conversation by the time they get home. You don't build closeness by being the most impressive person in the room. You build it by being the one person who actually noticed what she said. And if you want to take this further than tonight's date, if you want to actually know whether she's being real with you, whether she's genuinely feeling this connection too, or just going through the motions, that's the whole reason the truth detector exists. Links in the description. Like and subscribe for more.